Tuesday. Something about that word, something about that specific day is carrying an energy right now that made me stop and sit with your field for longer than I usually sit before pressing record. Because what I found there was not what I was expecting to find. For a Virgo energy right now, and the unexpected quality of it is what made me need to get this to you before Tuesday arrives and the good news finds you without you having been prepared to receive it in the full and open form that it deserves from the specific Virgo. It is arriving for this reading has 4 layers, and I am going to deliver all 4 in the exact order they came through. Do not go anywhere, because the 4th layer is the one that is going to make your chest feel different when it lands in the way that only the truth does. When it finally arrives in the form you have been waiting for, without letting yourself fully admit that you were waiting. Virgo, my beautiful Virgo, something is coming on Tuesday, and this reading is the first sign of it. Welcome. Stay with every word. The first layer, and this one is about you right now, before Tuesday, before the good news, before the smile that the title is promising. And that is genuinely coming in the full and real and arriving form of something that is not the language of encouragement, but the language of what is actually in the field around your life right now. I feel something in your energy that I want to name very carefully, because the careful naming is what produces the specific recognition that this reading was meant for you and not for someone else who found it by accident on the way to something else. There is a hope in you that you have stopped calling hope, because calling it hope makes it real enough to lose in the specific and quiet form of someone who has learned that the safest way to carry something you want is without giving it its full name, because the full name makes it visible, and visible things can be seen to be absent in the painful form of someone who named the thing they wanted and then had to watch the named thing not arrive in the full and confirming form that the naming made them expect. Whew. So you stopped naming it in the specific and self-protective form of someone who still carries the hope, but carries it unnamed, in the interior and private form of something that exists without being declared as the specific and wanting thing it is, in the quiet and unnamed dimension of your interior right now. Spirit wants me to name it for you before the first layer closes and the second opens. The unnamed hope is that something which has been uncertain or distant or slow moving in the specific situation your life is currently in is going to shift in the direction of good before you have to prepare yourself for the possibility that it will not, in the specific and accumulating form of someone who has been preparing for the not shifting without wanting to, but preparing anyway. because the preparing feels safer than the unnamed hoping that the shifting is coming. It is coming, and it is coming Tuesday. The second layer, stay with me, because this layer is more specific than the first, and the specificity is what I need you to hear. Before I tell you what the good news actually contains, in the precise and particular form that it is taking as it moves toward you right now, in the Tuesday arriving form of something that has been building behind a surface that is about to give way. The second layer is about the smile, the big smile the title is promising, and I want to tell you what kind of smile it is, because there are different kinds of smiles, and the kind matters for understanding what the good news is and why it lands the way it lands in the specific and physical form of the smile that the title is naming. This is not the polite smile that the Virgo produces in the functional and composed exterior that handles the daily interactions in the managed and professional form of someone who knows how to be present and gracious, even when the interior is somewhere else entirely. This is not the relieved smile. That arrives when something difficult ends. In the exhaling form of someone who was bracing and can now stop bracing because the difficult thing has passed, and the relief of its passing produces the specific and exhaling smile of someone who was holding something and can now put it down. This is the other kind, the involuntary kind, the kind that arrives on the face before the permission to smile has been given by the person whose face it arrives on, in the specific and unmanaged form of something that bypasses the composed exterior entirely and produces the smile from somewhere deeper than the functional surface manages. The smile that arrives before you have decided to smile. Spirit is showing me the specific moment when this smile arrives, and I want to describe it because the description is what makes this reading land in the chest rather than only in the mind of the Virgo reading it. You will be in the middle of something ordinary, an ordinary Tuesday activity. That has nothing dramatic about it, and nothing that announces itself as the container for the good news that is about to arrive in it without announcing its arrival. Before it gets there, in the ordinary and unannounced form of something that arrives through the ordinary, while the ordinary is still happening, without knowing it, is the container for what is about to arrive inside it. And something will happen, or be said, or arrive in the form of a message, or a call, or a piece of information that reaches you in whatever specific form your specific life uses to deliver the things that change the texture of a day from the ordinary it was into the before and after it becomes when the good news arrives in the big smile producing form that this reading is describing, and the smile will arrive on your face before you have processed what produced it. In the involuntary and bypassing the managed exterior form of something that goes directly to the place underneath the composure and produces the response from there, rather than from the managed surface, that most things are processed through first before the response is allowed to be visible in the exterior form that the Virgo presents to the daily interactions that require the presenting. The third layer, and this is the layer that made me sit longest before pressing record, because what it contains is not what Virgo readings usually contain in the standard form of the things that come through for the Virgo energy. In the ordinary reading, that does not have the particular and specific quality of this one, which is different in the way that I felt when I first went into your field and found what was there. The third layer is about who is sending the good news, or what is moving it towards you in the Tuesday arriving form of the thing that is going to produce the involuntary smile on the face of the Virgo, who has been carrying the unnamed hope in the interior and private form. That the first layer described, stay with me, because this part requires your full attention, not the partial attention of someone who is reading while also doing something else with the part of their attention that is not on this reading. Your full attention for the third layer. That is the most specific of the four that this reading contains. Someone has been thinking about you in the specific and sustained form of someone whose thoughts keep returning to you without having been directed there by any particular decision to think about you specifically, rather than the uninvited and involuntary form of thoughts that arrive in the pauses between the occupied moments of the days that have been passing, while the thinking about you has been the thing the pauses fill themselves with without being directed there by anything other than the specific and sustained pull that you produce in the interior of this person without trying to and without knowing that the producing is happening in the uninvited and sustained form of someone who keeps thinking about you, because the thinking keeps arriving on its own. This person has been trying to find the right form for what they have been thinking in the composing and reconsidering form of someone who picks up the phone and puts it down and picks it up again and types something and reads it back and decides it is not quite right in the form it has taken, and deletes it and puts the phone down again and sits with the unnamed wanting to find the right form for what has been in the sustained and uninvited thinking that has been filling the pauses between the occupied moments of the days since the last contact between them and you. They found the form very recently in the specific and arrived at form of someone who stopped composing and reconsidering and simply sent or decided or committed in the specific and resolved form of someone who has been in the composing and deleting for long enough that the finding of the form and the sending of it has become more available than the continuing of the composing and deleting. That was never going to produce the perfect form that the reconsidering was looking for before the sending committed to whatever form the sending takes. When the composing stops and the sending begins, and Tuesday is when it reaches you, I want to address something I feel forming in your mind right now as the third layer lands in the reading and feeling form of someone who is in the middle of this and who is having a particular reaction to what the third layer is describing. You are wondering if you know who this is in the specific and immediate form of someone whose mind goes instantly to the specific person or persons who could be the one that the third layer is describing as the source of the good news that Tuesday is carrying toward the Virgo who has been carrying the unnamed hope in the interior and protected form that the first layer named. Trust the person who came to mind first before the analyzing began in the specific and immediate form of the first thought that arrived before the second thought. Started qualifying the first in the Virgo way of applying the analytical process to the things the intuition knows before the analysis arrives to assess whether the knowing is accurate. The first person who came to mind is the right one. Trust the first thought. The fourth layer, and this is the one I almost did not include because it is the most personal and the most specific and the most directly about you in the interior and true form of what this reading has been building toward since the first word of the first layer. That began with the unnamed hope and is now arriving at the thing that the unnamed hope was hoping for in the silent and unspoken form of the specific Virgo who carries things in the interior and private form that this reading has been accompanying through all four of its layers. The fourth layer is this: you deserve to smile. In the full and involuntary and bypassing the composure form of the smile, the title is promising, not as a reward, not as the delayed return on a specific and calculated investment that has been earning interest while waiting for the return. That Tuesday is delivering simply as the natural and arriving form of what life brings to someone who has been in it, in the full and particular and honest form of the specific Virgo this reading found, who carries things in the interior and processes quietly and applies the analytical process even to the question of whether they deserve what is arriving before they allow the arriving to be fully received in the unanalyzed and simply here form that the smile will take when it arrives on the face before the analysis has a chance to decide whether the smile is warranted. The smile is warranted not because the analysis says so, but because the face knows before the analysis arrives in the involuntary and bypassing form of what Tuesday is going to produce in the interior of the Virgo who has been carrying the unnamed hope in the silent and protected form that this reading has been accompanying and naming and honoring as the real and present and valid thing it is. I want to give you something before Tuesday arrives in the permission form that the unnamed hope carrying Virgo specifically needs before the good news finds them. In the ordinary and unannounced Tuesday form that it is taking as it moves toward this specific Virgo, this reading found permission to name the hope. Now, before Tuesday confirms it, in the arriving and good news form, that will make the naming safe after the confirmation, but that this reading is making safe before the confirmation in the specific and pre-Tuesday form of the permission this reading carries for the specific Virgo it found today before the Tuesday that is already counting. Name it in the private and interior form that only you need to hear and no one else, because the naming is not for anyone else. It is for you and for the hope that has been waiting to be named by the specific person who has been carrying it in the unnamed and protected form that was the safest available option. Before this reading arrived and made the naming safe before Tuesday, and what Tuesday is carrying arrives and makes it safe after. Name it now and watch what happens to the feeling in your chest when you do that feeling, the specific and shifting form of what happens in the chest when the unnamed thing is finally named in the interior and private form of the permission this reading gave you to name it before Tuesday. That feeling is the first form of the smile that arrives before the face in the interior and invisible form of what the involuntary smile begins as before it reaches the outside in the visible and big and Tuesday arriving form that the title was always describing as what is coming for the specific Virgo who found this reading and is already, even now, before Tuesday, beginning to smile. Whew. You are protected and guided and seen in the full and specific form of someone whose unnamed hope was always real and always pointing towards something real. That Tuesday is now delivering in the good news and big smile form that this reading was always going to find you before, in the non-accidental timing of a reading that finds the right person at the right moment, which is now before Tuesday. And the smile it is carrying for you. Take gentle care of yourself, beautiful Virgo. Tuesday is very close, and the smile is already on its way.